Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. I have to say, looking at the massive stack of research on my desk today, I feel like we should almost rebrand our whole show.
It does have a certain ring to it, doesn't it?
It really does. Because today we are doing a deep dive into something that is simultaneously everywhere and nowhere.
Right.
We are looking at a single piece of paper. Specifically, we're looking at the British Guide to Designing A4 Funeral Service Sheets.
Which sounds, I admit, incredibly dry.
So dry.
It sounds like admin.
It sounds like the most boring thing we could possibly talk about. But, and this is a big but, when I started reading through the source material, I realized this isn't about stationery at all.
Not even a little bit.
This is about panic. It is about love.
Huh?
And it is about a very specific type of British logistical nightmare.
Yeah, it is the intersection of high emotion and office supplies. You have this rigid administrative standard, the A4 sheet, and you are tasking it with holding the entire weight of a human life.
And usually on a 3-day deadline. So our mission today is to really unpack this object. We want to understand how a standard piece of printer paper transforms into a memorial tribute.
A literal keepsake.
Right. We want to look at the shift from professional printing to DIY. And honestly, I have some questions about whether that is actually a good idea for families.
It's heavily debated.
And we want to get into the weeds today. I want to talk about paperweight, grain direction, and why the font you choose might actually ruin the service for your grandmother.
We're definitely going to get weirdly technical today.
Yeah.
But it matters, because this is a slice of culture that everyone interacts with.
Everyone.
But nobody really analyzes it until they are the one holding the stapler at 2 in the morning.
Exactly. So let's start with the object itself, the service sheet. In the UK, the terminology is a bit loose, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You will hear funeral program, which I always think sounds a bit like a theater playbill.
A bit showy.
Right, and you will hear service sheet, which is very functional. But order of service is probably the heavyweight champion of terms over there.
Order of service.
It implies structure. It implies a liturgy.
But physically, we are talking about one specific thing. A4 paper. 210 by 297 millimeters.
The standard European format.
Now, for you listening who might be in the US where we use letter size, or anywhere else really, we need to explain why A4 is the hill this industry dies on.
It really is.
Why not a custom size? Why not a perfect square? Or a scroll?
Well, there are two massive drivers here. The first is what I call the bureaucracy of death.
The bureaucracy of death.
The UK funeral industry is a machine. It relies on speed.
Right.
If you go to Italy or parts of the rural US, you might have a week, maybe 2, between the death and the funeral.
You have some breathing room?
Yeah, you have time to go to a professional printer, maybe get a glossy booklet made, something that looks like a high-end magazine.
But in the UK?
In the UK, especially in major cities, you are dealing with the crematorium slot. You have a 20-minute or maybe a 30-minute window booked at the local crematorium.
That is so fast.
The conveyor belt is moving. The clock starts ticking the second the death is registered.
Yeah.
You often have 3 to 5 days to get absolutely everything done.
So you do not have time for bespoke manufacturing?
You do not. You need something that fits in a standard photocopier. You need something that every office manager, every vicar, and every local print shop down the street can produce with their eyes closed.
And that is A4.
That is A4.
So it is essentially a supply chain issue.
Entirely. But the second reason is mathematical. And this is where the sources get really interesting. A4 isn't just a random rectangle they picked out of a hat.
Right.
It is based on the Lichtenberg ratio.
Okay, hold on. We are barely into the deep dive and you are dropping geometry on me.
I am?
Why does the Lichtenberg ratio matter to a grieving widow?
Because of the fold. This is the absolute genius of the ISO 216 paper standard.
Okay.
The aspect ratio of A4 is 1 to the square root of 2.
Which means what practically?
What that means is that when you fold an A4 sheet in half to make your booklet, the resulting size, which is A5, has the exact same proportions as the full sheet.
Oh, wow. So the design doesn't get squashed?
Exactly. If you take a US letter page and fold it in half, the proportions completely change. It gets stubbier.
It gets weirdly wide.
Right. But with A-series paper, the aesthetic balance scales perfectly. It creates a natural harmony that feels correct to the eye without you even knowing why.
Subliminal comfort.
It is a subliminal comfort.
That is fascinating. So the math of the paper actually supports the visual aesthetics of the booklet.
It does. It essentially means you can scale content down without it looking weird or distorted.
Okay, so we have this perfect rectangle. The sources describe three main layout variations for these sheets. First up is the single sheet, just flat.
The minimalist approach, or let's be honest, the cheap approach.
Is it generally seen as cheap?
It can be. But the sources note this is actually rising in popularity for something called direct cremation.
What is...
That is where there is no service. Or maybe just a very brief gathering right at the graveside.
Ah, okay.
If you are standing in the freezing rain for 10 minutes, you don't need a 4-page booklet. You need a flyer. We're here. This is the name. Here's a quick prayer. Let's go.
It is purely functional.
Yes.
But the heavy hitter, the gold standard the sources talk about, is the folded sheet.
The icon. 4 pages. Front cover, inside left, inside right, back cover.
This is the narrative arc.
It mimics a book. It has a cover, a story inside, and an epilogue.
And the sources mention you can go double-sided with this.
You can, but that introduces a whole layer of complexity regarding show-through and alignment that usually trips people up at home.
We'll get to the home printing nightmares later.
We will. But structurally, the folded A4 is the standard because it allows for the reveal.
The reveal.
Think about it. You hold the cover, you are looking at the face of the deceased, but you have to actually perform an action, the physical opening of the paper, to enter the service.
It creates a physical threshold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A physical threshold.
I really like that image. So let's walk through that threshold. I want to dissect the anatomy of this thing. The sources break it down panel by panel.
Let's do it.
Let's start with panel 1, the front cover, the first impression.
This is the visual anchor of the whole document. And the sources highlight a massive pressure point right here, which is the photo selection.
This seems like a total minefield for a family.
It is the hardest part.
Do you pick the photo from 3 months ago, where they look frail, but it is accurate to how they looked at the end? Or do you pick the photo from 1995, where they look like a movie star, but nobody at the funeral will recognize them?
It is the eternal debate in every living room. The sources suggest a recency bias is really common in the UK.
Meaning they choose the recent frail photo.
Yeah, we tend to value accuracy over vanity. It is a very, this is how we remember them kind of attitude.
But there's a fascinating countertrend mentioned in the material where families are ditching the photo entirely.
Just text or symbol info.
What kind of symbolism?
A sunset over the ocean, a specific flower from their garden, a cross if they were religious.
Why do that instead of a photo?
The sources argue this often happens when the death was traumatic, or perhaps after a very long, degrading illness where no recent photo feels right and old photos just feel like a lie.
Wow. It protects the memory.
It protects the memory, yes. It also creates a boundary.
Right.
If you put a face on the cover, you are engaging with the person directly.
Right.
If you put a sunset, you are engaging with the event. It depersonalizes the cover slightly to make the grief manageable in that public space.
That makes total sense. And obviously, alongside whatever image you choose, you have the essential data: full name, dates, location.
It is the title page. It grounds the event in time and space. We are here for John on this date at this church.
Okay, so you open the sheet. We are looking at the inside panels now. The source calls this the script.
Because that is exactly what it is. Its primary purpose is to support the service. We have to remember, funerals are inherently awkward.
People are very nervous.
They are emotional. They don't know the rules. Am I supposed to stand? Do I sit down now? Do I say amen here?
The inside panels are the stage directions.
They are.
And the big one here, and sources are absolutely adamant about this, is the hymns. You must print the lyrics.
You have to. You cannot skip the lyrics. This is what I like to call the mumble factor.
The mumble factor.
British people, generally speaking, do not like to sing in public unless they are at a football match or they are very drunk.
That is fair.
If you put them in a church and say, we are going to sing Jerusalem, and you don't give them the words, they will just hum.
They will mumble.
They will mumble their way through it.
And silence in a funeral is terrifying.
It is incredibly isolating for the family sitting in the front row. They need the sound. They need that wall of sound behind them to feel supported by the community.
So the order of service isn't just a list of what's happening?
No, it is a tool to force the congregation to participate.
But here's where I get a little skeptical about the DIY trend we are going to talk about later. The source mentions copyright, CCLI licensing.
Yes.
If I am making this at home on Microsoft Word on a Tuesday night, am I really checking him copyrights?
You absolutely aren't. And technically, you are breaking the law.
Right.
But let's be real. Nobody is going to sue a grieving widow for printing all things bright and beautiful.
Probably not.
However, the professional printers, the local print shops, they will check. They usually hold the license themselves.
Oh, I see.
This is one of those hidden complexities that you don't even think about until the printer asks you for your CCLI number and you stare at them blankly.
The inside panels also list the speakers, the eulogy, the tribute. The source notes that in secular services like humanist funerals, this list gets much, much longer.
It has to. In a religious service, the liturgy does all the heavy lifting.
Right.
The priest speaks for God, and by extension for the dead. The structure is already set by the church.
Right.
But in a secular service, the family has to build the meaning entirely from scratch.
So the order of service becomes a menu of speeches.
Exactly. The brother, the colleague, the grandchild.
It is a lineup.
It is. And for the audience, it acts as a duration guide. They look at the inside left panel and see 6 different speakers listed. They know they are settling in for an hour.
It manages expectations.
It manages expectations.
It basically tells you how long you have to hold it together before you can leave.
Exactly.
Finally, we close the booklet, the back panel. The source calls this the logistical wrap.
It is the landing gear. You have gone through the emotional height of the service, the committal, the goodbye, and now you need to re-enter reality.
And usually that starts with donations, too.
This is actually my favorite piece of sociology in these documents. The choice of charity is a final act of identity signaling.
How so?
Well, donations to the donkey sanctuary tells you something very specific about a person's personality versus donations to the Tate Modern,
Or donations to cancer research.
which tells you how they died. It is often the very last biographical fact you learn about the deceased.
And then below that, you usually have the wake location, the coordinates for the reception.
Please join us at the King's Head for refreshments. It is very British practicality.
But note the thank you message that is always there. It's usually pretty boilerplate. The family thanks you for your support.
Yes, but the source suggests this is crucial. Because the family often physically cannot speak to everyone on the day.
They are too overwhelmed.
They are exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
The back panel speaks for them. It formally closes the loop of reciprocity so they don't have to.
So that is the structure. It is a very efficient little document when you break it down. But now I want to pivot to the part of the outline that really sparked a debate in my head.
Let's hear it.
Section 3, the shift to DIY.
This is the big modern trend.
The sources paint this as design as therapy. They say that taking control of the design actually helps with the grieving process.
That is a psychological argument.
And I just have to ask, does it? Or is that just a nice way of saying we are dumping unpaid labor on a grieving person?
It is absolutely a double-edged sword. The sources cite psychologists who argue that doing something tangible is vital in the first 48 hours.
Because you feel so helpless.
Exactly. The death has happened. You can't fix that, but you can fix the margins on this page. You can choose the font.
I am controlling the font size, therefore I am controlling my universe.
Precisely. It is micro-control in the face of macro chaos. It gives you a clear task. I am doing this for him. It is an act of service. However, the flip side, and the sources are actually very honest about this, is the technical barrier. If you are comfortable with computers, it is therapy.
Right.
If you are not, it is literal torture.
I can just imagine the scene. It is 2 a.m. The funeral is in 2 days. The home printer is jammed. You are out of cyan ink, and you are just crying on your desk.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
That doesn't sound like therapy to me. That sounds like a nervous breakdown.
That sounds like a crisis.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why the rise of places like the funeral program site and these template marketplaces is so significant.
They sell pre-made templates for this.
Right. And they aren't just selling a file. They are selling a safety net.
How do you mean?
They're basically saying, you do the creative part. You pick the beautiful photo, you choose the poem, and we've already done the engineering part.
The margins, the layout, the folds.
We set the tabs, we fix the bleed. It bridges the gap between the desire for control and the utter lack of graphic design skill.
It prevents the 2 a.m. breakdown.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about that engineering. Section 4 of our outline, production logistics.
My favorite part.
Because the promise of our deep dive is that we really get into the weeds, and the source material spends a shocking amount of time talking about GSM.
Grams per square meter. The weight of the paper. This is the hill I will die on.
Appropriate choice of words for today.
Standard office paper, the stuff in your printer right now, is 80 GSM. The source basically says, do not use this, ever.
Why not? Paper is paper, isn't it?
80 GSM is the sound of bureaucracy. It rattles when you shake it. It is translucent.
Translucent.
If you print a dark photo on the front cover,
Yeah.
you can see the ghost of it bleeding through to the inside page. It feels disposable. It feels like a utility bill.
And you really do not want a memorial to feel like a utility bill.
You do not. So we step up to 100 GSM, which the source calls the minimum for dignity.
The minimum for dignity, I love that.
But 120 GSM or even 160 GSM is the sweet spot.
Explain the difference in feel for the person holding it.
It is all about the hand feel. There is a subconscious human tendency to equate physical weight with importance.
Right.
When you hand someone a 160 GSM card, it has stiffness. It resists gravity slightly when you hold it by the edge.
It doesn't just flop over.
No, it has a snap when you flick it. It signals to the brain, this is a permanent object. This matters.
But here is the technical trap the sources warn about. Home printers absolutely hate 160 GSM paper.
They despise it. The rollers inside a standard inkjet printer are designed for thin, flexible paper.
So what happens?
When you feed in thick card, the rollers can't grab it properly. They slip. So you get paper jams. Or even worse, you get roller marks.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those little black greasy tracks right down the middle of your aunt's face on the cover.
That has a nightmare.
And then there's the grain direction. The source buried this in a footnote, but I found it utterly fascinating.
I saw that. I didn't even know paper had a grain. I thought that was just for wood.
It is. And paper's made of wood fibers. During the manufacturing process, those microscopic fibers align in one specific direction.
Oh,
If you try to fold the paper against the grain, perpendicular to those fibers, the paper doesn't want to bend. It breaks.
it literally cracks.
The toner on top cracks off, yes.
Yeah.
But the paper surface itself actually ruptures.
Wow.
You get this ragged, white, fuzzy scar down the spine of the booklet. It looks terrible. It looks homemade in the bad way.
How do you know which way the grain is running on a pack of paper?
On a cheap pack of A4 from the supermarket, you don't. You just guess and hope. But professional printers buy short grain or long grain paper specifically for how they intend to fold it.
So this is a massive argument for the hybrid method the source mentions.
The hybrid method is the smartest move you can make. You design it at home, so you get the therapeutic agency, you choose the poems, you pick the photo.
You do the emotional work.
Yes, but then you take that PDF file to a local print shop.
And you let them handle the physics.
You let them handle the GSM, the grain direction, and the trimming.
Speaking of trimming, let's talk about bleed, the absolute nemesis of the amateur designer.
The white border of shame.
Explain the white border of shame for us.
Most home printers have a non-printable margin. It is usually about 5 millimeters around the very edge of the paper.
Because the printhead physically cannot go off the edge.
Right. You'd spray ink inside the machine.
So if you design your template with a beautiful edge-to-edge photo of the ocean covering the whole front page,
When you print it, you get a 5 millimeter stark white stripe all the way around the photo.
which looks awful.
It looks like a mistake. It breaks the immersion of the design. Professional printers avoid this by printing on oversized paper, usually a size called SRA3.
Oversized paper.
They print the image past the final edge, and then they use a massive guillotine to chop the edges off so the ink goes right to the very edge of the final A4 sheet.
And you simply cannot do that with a pair of scissors on your kitchen table at midnight.
You cannot. So the therapy of DIY has a hard limit. It is therapeutic right up until the hardware limitations kick in and ruin your design.
Exactly. Now, there was one more technical thing that really caught my eye in the logistics section. Color profiles. RGB versus CMYK.
Oh, this is the classic amateur disappointment.
Explain it for everyone listening.
Okay, your computer screen or your iPad emits light. It uses red, green, and blue RGB to make colors. It is backlit.
So colors look very bright.
They look neon, vibrant, luminous. But your printer uses physical ink. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. CMYK. It is subtractive. It relies on ambient light reflecting off the paper.
So you pick a bright, luminous neon pink on your screen.
And it prints as a dull, muddy salmon color.
Oh, wow.
The source warns that families are constantly disappointed by this. They ask the print shop, why doesn't it look like it did on my iPad?
And the answer is?
Because light is not ink. You cannot print light.
So if you were designing at home, what is the advice? Should you stick to safer colors?
Absolutely. Stick to muted tones, pastels, grays, navy blues. If you try to go for high-voltage neon or vibrant jewel tones, the ink will betray you.
Okay, moving on to section 5 of the deep dive, cultural adaptability. We established earlier that A4 is the rigid standard, but the UK is not a monolith.
It is incredibly diverse.
How does this rigid rectangle adapt to different cultures?
The source calls the A4 sheet a chameleon. Because it has no inherent religious architecture baked into it, it is just a blank geometric rectangle. It can hold absolutely anything. Yeah.
What about different traditions? The source mentioned West Indian funerals in London specifically.
Yes, that was a great example. In many Afro-Caribbean communities, the source notes a strong trend towards the booklet format rather than just a folded sheet.
Meaning multiple pages stapled in the middle.
Right, like a magazine. Glossy paper, high color saturation, dozens and dozens of photos.
It is a totally different vibe.
It is a celebration of life that demands volume. The standard A4 sheet just becomes the cover of a much larger document. It ceases to be just a schedule and becomes a full photo album.
And what about the text itself, the bilingual challenge?
This is a fascinating layout puzzle. If you have a Welsh and English service or a Polish and English service, how do you fit the text?
Do you just do a left column for one language and a right column for the other?
That seems the most logical, yeah.
But think about the space constraints.
Exactly. It immediately halves your available font size, or it halves your content. You literally have to cut the eulogy in half to fit the translation on the same page.
So the physical design actually forces brevity.
It forces a severe edit of the life story. The physical dimensions of the paper dictate how much of the person's life can actually be told.
The medium is the message, quite literally.
It really is.
What about the broader secular shift? We are seeing way more celebrations of life rather than traditional somber funerals. Does the design change for those?
Drastically. And you see it mostly in the typography.
The fonts.
Yes. A traditional religious funeral uses serif fonts, Times New Roman, Garamond, Baskerville.
Because they look old.
They look like tombstones. They have those little feet on the letters. They look like history and authority.
And a celebration of life.
They use sans serif fonts, Helvetica, Arial, Calibri.
Yeah.
Clean, modern, lighter on the page. It signals narrative rather than heavy liturgy.
But speaking of fonts, I want to bring up a very specific critique from the source regarding accessibility. They call it the crying 80-year-old rule.
This is genuinely the most practical piece of advice in the entire document.
Because most of the audience at a typical funeral is older. Their eyesight is failing.
And the lighting is terrible. Churches are notoriously dim. Crematoriums always have that weird mood lighting dimmer switch going on.
So if you choose a beautiful, spindly, elegant script font, and you print it in light gray ink,
You're being actively hostile to your audience? No one can read it.
it defeats the whole purpose of the script.
It does. The source highly recommends high contrast. Black ink on stark white or cream paper. Never gray text.
And what about point size?
Do not go below 12-point font. Ever.
No, 12-point feels huge when you're typing on a screen.
It feels like a children's book on a big monitor. But on paper, in a dim church, holding it with shaking hands, 12-point is the absolute minimum. 14 is even better.
So vanity trying to make the page look elegant with tiny, delicate text is actually just bad design.
It is terrible design. Design must serve the user. And the user, in this specific case, is an elderly person who has been crying and probably forgot their reading glasses in the car.
Design for them.
Designed for the crying 80-year-old. Words to live by.
That is the real takeaway. Let's look at the afterlife of the sheet. Section 6. The source calls it a relic.
Think about the last funeral you went to.
Okay.
You didn't keep the flowers. They die. You didn't keep the funeral car. You certainly didn't keep the coffin.
No.
What is the one thing you took home?
The service sheet.
It is the only portable object from the event. It creates this fascinating democratization of inheritance.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the eldest son gets the gold watch. The daughter gets the house.
Right.
But the distant cousin, the neighbor from across the street, the ex-colleague who showed up out of respect, they get the A4 sheet. It is their piece of the inheritance.
And we keep them. I have a drawer full of them at home. I feel incredibly guilty throwing them away.
That guilt is really common. It is a form of iconoclasm.
Iconoclasm.
To throw away the printed image of the dead feels like a second killing. It feels like a violation of their memory. So we stash them in drawers.
The source mentions people putting them in memory boxes or family Bibles.
It is a form of personal archaeology. You open that box in 10 years, and pulling out that specific weight of paper triggers a massive sensory recall.
You remember the smell of the church?
The damp wool coats, the rain outside, the music. But the source raises a really big concern about the digital shift happening right now.
You mean the PDF?
Yes.
Yes.
We're just emailing these things now. Here is the PDF of Dad's service.
It is very convenient, especially for relatives who live overseas and can't travel.
It is convenient, but can you mourn over a PDF?
You really can't. You can't hold it. You can't crumple it in your hand while you cry during the eulogy.
Exactly. The tactile feedback is completely missing. The source argues that while the digital version is great for information, telling people what time to log on to the Zoom stream, it completely fails as a memorial.
Because it has no weight.
It has no GSM. It has no physical presence.
Also, what about digital rot? A PDF sitting in an old email account from 2005? Good luck finding that or opening it.
Exactly. We're risking a digital dark age for our personal family histories. We assume the cloud is eternal, but it isn't.
But a piece of thick paper folded inside a book.
That lasts 100 years, easily. Paper is surprisingly resilient.
Now, I want to talk about one weird modern hybrid mentioned in the update to the source material.
Oh, the QR codes.
Yes,
Yeah.
QR codes printed right on the funeral sheets.
It sparks a massive debate, tacky or practical.
It feels very tacky to me. Scan here to see Grandma. It feels like I'm sitting at a restaurant trying to order food.
It does feel transactional. It breaks the solemnity. And there is but here, the argument for it is actually very compelling.
How so?
Think about the space limits of A4. With a QR code, you can link to a 20-minute video tribute.
Oh, I see.
You can link to a Spotify playlist of their favorite songs. You can link directly to a charity donation page, so people actually give money right there in the pew on their phones.
So it turns the piece of paper into a digital portal?
It solves the physical space limitation. The paper gives you the dignified, highly edited summary, and the QR code gives you the messy, sprawling reality of the entire life.
That is actually a great point. I think we will probably see more of it, whether we like the aesthetic or not.
We definitely will.
Well, we are coming to the end of our deep dive today. We have gone from the raw pulp of the paper, through the math of the fold, the politics of the photo cover, and all the way into the digital cloud.
We covered a lot of ground.
If you had to summarize the British way of doing this, based on all these sources, what is it?
I think the phrase is constrained emotion.
Constrained emotion.
The A4 sheet is essentially a cage. It is a rigid, standardized, highly bureaucratic cage. But inside that physical cage, we pour the most intense, wild emotions we possess as humans.
It keeps the grief from spilling over and making a mess.
It gives the grief edges. It makes it holdable. It turns a massive tragedy into an object you can neatly put in your coat pocket.
And for the DIYer, the person listening right now who might have to design one of these next week.
Don't be a hero.
Don't be a hero.
Use a template. Buy the 120 GSM paper. And for God's sake, check the grain direction before you fold it.
And maybe let the print shop handle the folding for you.
Please, let the professionals handle the folding.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
Okay?
Next time you attend a service and someone hands you that folded piece of paper at the door, don't just glance at it and shove it in your pocket.
No.
Feel the weight of the paper. Look at the margins. Look at the font choice. Realize that someone, probably a family member, stayed up until 3 in the morning agonizing over those tiny details.
It is an act of love encoded in ink.
A final act of caretaking. Thanks for diving in with us on the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We will see you next time.
Goodbye.
Wait. Before we cut the feed completely, I just realized looking at my notes, we completely missed one very specific cultural detail the source mentioned.
Which one?
The hymn sandwich.
Oh my goodness, the hymn sandwich.
Yeah.
We absolutely cannot leave without explaining that.
We talked about mumble singing earlier, but the actual structure of the songs is so specific.
It is the default Anglican architecture for a funeral.
Which is what?
A hymn at the very start, a hymn at the very end, and the meat of the service in the middle.
Why do they do it that way?
The first hymn gets everyone standing up and breathing together. It physically unifies the room right out of the gate.
And the last hymn?
The last hymn gives you a socially acceptable excuse to stand up, so you are already on your feet and ready to leave when it ends.
It's crowd control set to music.
It is literally crowd control set to music. That is the most British description of a funeral I have ever heard.
Yeah.
But it works perfectly.
It really does. All right, now we are actually done. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Take care.